Okay, so maybe you got a little lost in that hairy code in the last video, and that is totally okay and totally expected at this point in time. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a tool that will help you walk through code so that you don't get lost in the future. And if you do get lost, you can use it to walk through and help you understand it. It's also great for finding bugs, and that is the Safari debugger. So I have here fired up in Live Server in Safari, the app that we just wrote. So we'll put in four A's, and you can see it gave us our GPA and the message. So if you want to use the debugging tool, you'll hit Command Option I, and that will pop up this little window at the bottom, which is the Safari Developer Tools. The tab you're going to want to click on is the Sources tab. If you click on that, you'll see some very familiar code, or at least hopefully, because this is the code you just wrote. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on line 16. When I click on line 16, you'll notice it puts this gray highlight. What that is that is a breakpoint. A breakpoint says pause the code execution and give me control because I want to control how this executes and I want to go line by line. So what it's going to do is it's going to run the code all the way up till line 16. Then it's going to pause and then it's going to let you take over. So I'm going to reload this page to trigger the code. So the code is running and it has paused. Um, and so we can see here that counter is going to be set to 0. Over here, there are the controls for the debugger. Our code has paused. Nothing is happening. You'll notice our page is partially loaded, but not fully loaded. That's because we've paused everything. So if we run this line, the highlighted portion will run next. You'll notice this let counter equals 0 is darkly highlighted. That's because that is the portion that's going to run when we hit the next button. So there are two next buttons. There's the step over button and the step into button. I typically use the step into button. And when we talk about functions, I'll explain the difference later. But for now, just click the step into button or click F7 or command semicolon. So that will run the very next line of code. So we've run that line of code, and now over here we can see we have a new variable called counter, which has a value of 0. If we hit the step into button again, so right now it's going to see if 0 is less than 4. It is, so we should expect this loop to start. So we'll hit next, and now we're in the loop. If we hover over it, counter is 0, counter plus 1 would be 1, so we should expect this prompt to say, what is your letter grade for class 1? If we hit next, it runs this line of code and says, what is your letter grade for class 1? We're going to put a B plus for now. So we hit OK. And now if we hover over letter grade, we can see that letter grade is B plus. We have another variable called GPA and it's undefined because we haven't run this line of code yet. When we run line 19, GPA will go from being undefined to being 0. So we'll hit next. And now we have a GPA of 0 and a letter grade of B plus. Now we've come to our if statement. We're going to see if B plus is equal to A. Because it's not, we should expect it to jump to line 24 and check if it's equal to A minus. If we hit next, sure enough, there it is. And now we're checking if B plus is equal to A minus. It's not, so we should expect it to skip over line 25 and 26 and jump to line 27 to see if B plus is equal to B plus. If we hit next, it does. Now we're seeing if B plus is B plus. It is, so we should expect it to enter line 28 and compare and then execute that line. And then it should finish that, hit this closing curly brace on line 29 and jump all the way down to line 57 at the end of the if statement, because this is where the if statement ends. So we're going to hit that next button. We'll hit next. Sure enough, B plus is the same as B plus. So we're going to set GPA to 3.3. Right now, GPA is 0. We hit the next button. Now our GPA is 3.3. And then it jumped to the end of the if statement. Our total GPA, we started off at 0. But we're going to say set it equal to 0 plus whatever is in GPA. And so if we run that line, now if we hover over total GPA, it's 3.3. And you can see the highlighted line is this counter plus plus. So our counter variable is 0. I told you plus plus increments. So if we run this next line of code, we should see that our counter goes from 0 to 1. So we'll hit the next button. And so now our counter is 1. Now we're checking if 1 is less than 4. It is, so we're going to start the loop. And then 1 plus 1 is 2, so we should expect to see what is your letter grade for class 2. If we run that, we get a prompt. What is your letter grade for class 2? And I will say A, so you can see how quickly an if statement can run. And our letter grade is A. Our GPA is undefined. If we hit next, now our GPA is 0. And don't mix up GPA with total GPA. Our total GPA is 3.3. So if we hit the next button, we get that our GPA is 4.0 and it drops immediately to the end of the if statement. It didn't even check any of the other conditions because as soon as it found the condition that was true, it did that and then skipped to the end. So now our total GPA is 3.3 and we're going to add on an A here. So it should be like 7.3. If we hit next, our total GPA is 7.3. At this point, we've run our loop twice. We've evaluated it and we know that this loop works. So maybe you're done testing it and there's another portion of the code that you want to test. Like for example, this if statement. We want to, and maybe this total GPA calculation, we want to make sure that actually works. So what you can do is you can add a breakpoint to line 61 and come up and remove the breakpoint by clicking on it on line 16. Now you can hit this, it looks like a mix between the pause and the play button, and that will continue script execution, and it will run all the way up until it hits your next breakpoint. So we'll continue to the next one, and it says, what is your letter grade for class 3? We'll put in a C minus. And then what is your letter grade for class 4? We'll give ourselves another A, but you'll notice it didn't pause between loops. It just immediately went through the code twice without any pause. Now it has paused again because it's hit our breakpoint on line 61. Our total GPA is 13, but that's not actually our GPA because a grade point average is your grade points divided by the total number of classes you've taken to get an average. And so we've taken 4 classes, so we're going to take 13 and divide it by 4. We'll hit next, and our GPA is 3.25. So now I'm going to show you something you can do with the debugger, and it's called forcing a condition. So right here, maybe we want to test this if statement, and we really want to test what happens when we pass in exactly 3.3 is the GPA at. And maybe you don't want to figure out the letter grades that would be necessary to get a 3.3. So what you can do is called forcing a condition. Right now, our GPA evaluates to 3.25, and that's not going to work for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to click over to the console tab, and we're going to say total GPA equals 3.3, and then we'll hit enter. As soon as we have done that, we'll go over to our sources tab and hover over GPA. And now, even though it was 3.25, that's what all of our calculations came out to, we've forced it to be something else. So now we can check if this if statement works the way it's supposed to. If you have a GPA of exactly 3.3, then you should get this first message. So now we've forced the GPA to be what we want it to be. So if total GPA 3.3 is greater than or equal to 3.3, 3.3 and 3.3 are equal. So we should expect this next alert function to run. If we hit the next button, sure enough, it drops to that alert statement. And if we hit the next button, it says your GPA is 3.3, great job, your consistent effort is paying off, and then the whole rest of that message. So using the console, we can force a certain condition to be met so that we can test specific portions of our code, even if the prior calculations didn't allow it. So we'll hit close, and then it drops to the end of the script tag. If you were just running this normally and not running it using live server, then you might not have this extra code. Because we're running it using live server, there's some extra code here. It's just JavaScript to make it so that your window reloads if something changes, things like that. And so it's just their extra code. You can totally ignore it. But in order for your page to fully load, you'll see it's still in the partial loading. You'll need to hit this continue button one more time. And then boom, your page is loaded. And that's how you use the debugger in Safari.